Welcome to the Deep Dive, where curiosity needs chaos and facts occasionally wear sunglasses indoors. Today's episode, the dark secret behind Japan's Ainu people's genetic origins. Spoiler alert, it's not aliens, it's science. We're unpacking the mystery of Japan's true OGs, the Ainu, descendants of the ancient Jomon folks who were rocking the islands long before sushi was cool. And of course, guiding this intellectual roller coaster is our behind-the-scenes sorcerer, FireflyHaku, our producer who somehow keeps us from turning this into a karaoke battle about anthropology.
So let's get right into it. For centuries, right there in Japan's northern islands, there's been this lingering mystery, a question that kind of pokes a hole in the nation's official origin story. Who really were the first people of Japan?
And this whole thing really kicked into high gear way back in 1865. A British explorer meets the indigenous Ainu people and writes this down. Now that might sound like just a random note in a travel journal, but it was actually the spark that lit a scientific firestorm of controversy that would burn for more than 150 years.
Because that one observation basically set up this epic clash of narratives. On one side, you had the official government story, the one that says Japan is the single pure homogeneous race. But on the other side, you had the Ainu's own ancient oral history, a story passed down for generations that said, no, we were here first, all over Japan, before invaders we called the Wajin pushed us all the way north.
For over a century, the official story was the only one you'd hear. It was in all the textbooks. But all the while, the other story, the Ainu story, was being quietly passed from elder to child, just waiting for the hard evidence to finally catch up.
So where did the first crack in the official story come from? Well, you'd probably think it was from some dusty archaeological dig, right? Nope. The first major breakthrough came from the clean, quiet, sterile environment of a genetics lab.
In 1991, a researcher named Dr. Masako Yamada, who had spent years building trust with Ainu communities, finally got her results. And what she found was incredible. The Ainu carried this unique genetic signature, a piece of DNA called haplogroup Y1, that proved they weren't just some variation of Japanese people. They were a totally distinct group.
Now, that discovery was absolutely revolutionary. But you know how science works. It just blew the doors open to an even bigger, more profound question. Okay, so if the Ainu are a distinct group, just how old are their roots in Japan? And the answer came in 1998, from what I can only describe as a miracle of archaeology. A skeleton from Japan's prehistoric Jomon period was found, and it was so perfectly preserved that its DNA was still completely intact after 9,000 years.
And when the lab results came back, whoa. It was a scientific bombshell that proved the Ainu elders' stories were true all along. The DNA wasn't just similar to modern Ainu people, it was a near-perfect match. This was the proof. The Ainu weren't recent arrivals from somewhere else. They were the direct, unmixed descendants of Japan's original inhabitants. And that changed, well, everything.
So, if the Ainu are the original people of Japan, what in the world does that mean for the other 125 million people living there today? Well, as it turns out, the genetics held the answer to that too.
When scientists took that same ancient Jomon DNA and compared it to modern mainland Japanese populations, the results were just stunning. The average person walking around Tokyo today carries only about 12% of this original Jomon ancestry. The DNA was telling a crystal-clear story. The vast majority of modern Japanese people are descended from people who arrived much, much later.
The data points to this massive population shift, which you could call a slow-motion invasion, that started around 300 BC. These people, who we call the Yayoi, came from the Korean peninsula. And they didn't come with armies, but with something far more powerful: wet rice farming. This new tech allowed their population to absolutely explode, and over centuries, the original Jomon people were just genetically swamped.
And the genetic evidence for this is undeniable. There's this specific male genetic marker, haplogroup O, that's super common on the Korean peninsula. It's all over Western Japan. But as you travel north and east, it just starts to fade out. And when you get to Hokkaido, the Ainu homeland, bam, it hits a wall. The strait between the islands acted like a kind of genetic firewall.
And this really shows you just how incredibly deep their roots go. Geneticists can trace the Ainu lineage back something like 40,000 years, connecting them to the very first wave of modern humans to spread across Asia. They are, quite literally, a genetic time capsule, a living window into our deep past.
And this is where the story takes a really dark turn.
Because once you understand this undeniable genetic truth, you start to see the tragic reason why that national myth of a homogeneous Japan was pushed so forcefully for so long.
In order to maintain the myth, the Ainu identity itself had to be erased. Starting in the late 1800s, there was this systematic campaign to seize their lands, to ban their language and spiritual ceremonies. They even stole the remains of over 1,600 of their ancestors from sacred burial grounds for research that was meant to prove they were inferior.
And a 2019 study finally uncovered the scientific reason behind the devastating population crash that followed this forced assimilation. It turns out the Ainu had unique immune system genes that were perfectly adapted for a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. But when they were forced into a settled, farming life, those same genes made them incredibly vulnerable to new diseases. It was a biological tragedy.
But, and this is a really important but, despite a century of suppression, this story is not about extinction. It is a story of incredible survival. And what's happening today is nothing short of a powerful cultural revival.
A whole new generation, whose families may have hidden their heritage for decades out of fear, are now using the very science of genetics to reconnect. They're finding Ainu ancestors in their DNA tests, they're forming online communities, and they're working directly with museums to take back their own story and reclaim their traditional knowledge.
And this isn't some small niche movement. Public interest is finally catching on. The brand new National Ainu Museum, which opened in 2020, had over 1 million visitors in its very first year. That's a massive signal that things are finally, truly changing.
So from a people once officially declared non-existent, to a culture that's now experiencing this vibrant revival, the Ainu story is just this powerful testament to resilience. It reminds us that history isn't just written in books. Sometimes the most profound truths are carried inside us, in our DNA, just waiting to be read. So buckle up, subscribe, and pretend you're learning while secretly judging our pronunciation of archaeogenetics. Welcome to the Deep Dive, where no topic is off limits, especially the ones that make historians nervous.